Have you ever wondered what happens if you braise beef in 3 pounds of onions? Well, today I'm going to show you. This is a delicious pasta dish called Pasta Genovese, and here's how I make it. To start, it looks like any other meat braise. You have celery, you have carrot, and you have onions. The only difference is the proportions. We're using a small amount of celery and carrot. Like usual, I'm going to cut it into a very fine dice, but we have tons of onions. Traditionally, you use about 4-to-1 ratio of onions to meat. I like to use about 3-to-1, so I have 3 pounds of Vidalia Spanish onions here, and I have about 1 pound of meat, which I'll show you in a little bit. But this dish is really just a braise, and the liquid is the juice from those onions. But cutting these carrots and celery down into nice little cubes, they'll really kind of melt, which is nice in this sauce. You don't want huge pieces. And to get the onions to the consistency I like, we're going to cut the tops off. We're going to cut them in half through the root so the root stays together. And we're going to use a mandolin to get these nice, thin, and consistent. Pull off all those skins. If you want to make some stock, throw those in the side. But we're going to run these through somewhere between the first and the second setting. You don't want them too thin, but that's right around what we're looking for. We want them to really kind of melt over the next couple of hours. Be careful, don't cut your fingers. I know I'm not a great role model here with no guide, but that's what you're left with. That's a little over 3 pounds of onions, and that's going to be basically all of the braising liquid you need. There's a little others that I'll show you. I'm going to be using short rib for this. I cut the bones off and I trimmed some of the fat and silver skin, but a lot of people like to use a chuck. That's totally fine. Use whatever meat you like in your braises. You can't really go wrong with it. We're going to start off by browning it slightly. As you know, my opinions on browning, I don't think it's completely necessary, but I do like it in this dish to get that good fond on the bottom of the pan, which will impart its flavors. I also have 2 little beef marrow bones here left over from another thing, so I'm going to throw those in the oven. I'm going to toast them up, and then we're going to get thrown into that sauce. It'll just add a little bit of umami, which is delicious. Now I'm going to throw in those pieces of short rib. We're just going to brown them off on both sides, and then we're going to pull them out. I'm not going for anything crazy here. That one's not super browned. This next one is more browned than I usually take things, but that's what you're looking for. Get it around there, and there's no issue with that whatsoever. Brown the other side. I'm not worrying about all the sides here. I'm also not salting or peppering the meat. This dish is inherently salty because you do use a lot of salt to break down those onions, which you'll see, so I like to just withhold that at this step. Throw those carrots and celery in once that meat is out. I'm also going to throw in a little bit of onions because I want to use the sweetness and the meltiness of these onions to deglaze the bottom of this pan a little bit. You don't need to do that step, but if you have enough onions, you might as well. Once you've let those vegetables cook down for 2 or 3 minutes, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of tomato paste. This is optional. You do not need to do that, but I like the depth of flavor that builds. We're going to cook that around until it gets that beautiful rust kind of color, and then we're going to add in 1 or 2 cups worth of white wine. Drier the better. It cooks out quite well, and we're going to let this cook down for about a minute or 2. I'm going to add a little bit of salt because, transparently, I forgot to salt the veggies when I put them in there, and that was the original game plan. But once you do that, I'm going to throw that meat in, and we're going to let this reduce by around half before we proceed. But get that meat right on. This is the only other liquid we're using in the braising process, aside from a little bit of water at the end if you need it, but that's what we're looking for there. The colors changed. They're good to go. I'm going to throw in those marrow bones, just kind of mix them around, get that fond off the sizzling platter, and then cover it with the onions. You don't need to mix it up at this stage. All you need to do is pour those in there, and we're going to add a little bit of salt over the top of them, which is going to help them reduce their liquid out of them. I'm going to cover it up, and I'm going to throw it in the oven at 300 degrees. Some people like to cook it over the stove the whole way. That's totally fine. But here we are, half an hour in. I just like to give it a little bit of a mix at this point. You can see they've reduced in volume by about half, maybe a quarter already. They're not filled all the way up to the brim, but just mix that up and throw it back in for about another hour. We are a little after probably an hour and 15 minutes of this sitting in the oven. You can see it's really started to reduce. The onions are starting to get a little bit brown and caramelized looking. It's exactly what you're looking for. I let those go for about another 30 minutes. This is where they're at. You can see the juices have really come out. They're looking absolutely beautiful. I'm going to put the cover on, and I'm going to let this go for just about another half an hour, which is going to bring them right around to about 2.5 hours. That's what I'm looking for right there. They've really done a very good job reducing into a beautiful liquid-filled braising liquid, and that's what you want right there. The onions have let out a lot of their juices, and at this point, I'm just going to give them a little bit of a mix, and I'm going to put this back into the oven uncovered for about 1 more hour. The goal of this is to let it really start to break down and get hit with a little more direct heat that the cover wasn't letting it do before. You could also just put this right on your stovetop right now if you wanted, but I like to throw it in the oven for 1 more hour. And that's where we are after that 1 more hour. The onions have let out a lot of their liquid. They're looking beautiful, brown, caramelized. They're not fully cooked down yet, absolutely not, but I'm going to pull out those marrow bones because they've let out everything they have, and you can see the meat's ready to almost start breaking apart, but not fully, which is why we're going to continue cooking this. After I let this cook for another 30 or so minutes, I'm going to start to try to break up the meat, and then you can kind of feel when it's right where you want it, and then keep cooking it down. This was right about 2 hours on the stovetop, bringing us to right around 4.5, 5 hours total here. I got water just waiting, and I'm going to cook the sauce in that pan, but that's exactly what I'm looking for right there. These are the noodles, though. I'm using Zeta Cut, ZD, Rigatoni. I'm not totally sure what they are. They're kind of a mix of everything, but they're very beautiful and smooth noodles. Traditionally, it's made with these, and you like break them off of one long piece, but these are what I see everyone use, so I wanted to keep it very authentic, and they're pretty fantastic. I really like them as a noodle, but we're going to throw those in there. We're going to cook them to about 1 minute shy of al dente, and then we're going to bring this all together. To start the sauce process, I'm going to throw about 2 or 3 big scoops of this sauce into a pan with a good amount of that juice to come out with it, and I'm going to give it a little bit of a mix. You're going to turn this into a beautiful sauce using a little bit of butter, which I'm going to throw in right now, and then a good amount of that starchy pasta water. Once I start to mix that up and we let that butter melt down a little bit, I'm going to start to scoop in little ladles of here, not really ladles, but they're spoonfuls of the starchy top level pasta water that starch likes to kind of float. I'm going to mix that together. It is a real kind of thick, kind of meaty sauce. You're not going to get the meat to really spread evenly. So when you mix the noodles around in the sauce, just know that you want the liquid to kind of start to coat the noodles, but the meat is always going to be kind of clumpy. I've never been able to fix that problem, but when you put it into the bowl later, you can kind of break it up, and that's totally fine. When you eat it, you don't notice the difference. But I'm just going to mix it up real nice and good. I'm going to toss a little bit to really kind of aerate it, but you can see that meat likes to kind of cling together, which is not a problem at all. Trust me, that sauce is coating those noodles, and then I'm going to kill the heat, and we're going to pour in a bunch of cheese. You definitely want to kill the heat, that way it doesn't clump, it doesn't get stuck to the pan. Turning it off, there's plenty of hot liquid in there still from the starchy pasta water. If you need a little more, add it in, but just don't turn that burner back on. If you want to add more cheese, go right ahead. Just work to get that consistency you're looking for, and that's it. That's the entire Pasta Genovese. It's a very easy, beautiful, kind of light ragu. All you really have is white wine and onion juice, and now I'm going to plate this up. I've warmed this bowl up also, which will help this kind of stay nice, but you could tell that the meat is now kind of evenly distributing itself. It's lightened up quite a bit from the cheese and the butter and the water, which is fine. I'm going to put a little more of the non-panned sauce in there. This is right out of the Dutch oven, and then I'm going to coat it with a little bit of cheese, and you're good to go. This is a very, very light dish. It looks heavy, but it is not. It is light. It's fragrant. This is fantastic. The only way to describe it is by you tasting it. Give it a try. Let me know what you guys think, but I absolutely adore this.